Hello everyone and welcome to Elsevier's Spotlight podcast series. In this coming series, I'm meeting with some of the industry figures that work at Elsevier and outside some of our publishing partners about their experiences in 2020 and tackling the challenges of COVID-19. Today, I'm meeting with Peter Eichhorn, who's the VP for Elsevier's retail sales. Hi, Peter. Welcome.
Hi, Fiona.
How are you doing? Where are you calling us from today, actually?
No, I'm very well. Thank you very much. You find me in my home close to Munich, and that's the usual place for me to work since this whole situation appeared in April. So yeah. Anyway, I'm responsible for international teams. So for me, the workspace is where my internet connection is and where my electronic equipment sits.
So actually, this year's been a major change for you and your teams. You've actually had to stay at home.
Yeah, so of course, in the past, a big part of my responsibility was traveling and seeing people in their places. Of course, visit offices around the world from Elsevier, have meetings with my teams, have meetings with customers, what I really enjoyed. And that is, yeah, I was waking up in the same bed for a lot of weeks, what is quite unusual for my normal life. Yeah.
Okay. But more broadly, though, there have been a lot of challenges. So you've obviously been able to pivot and work from home, and you're now used to spending all that time at home rather than on the road, but you're still talking to customers, but the environment, the wider industry has changed an awful lot. There have been some really major shifts that you've seen this year. What would you sort of describe as sort of the biggest trends that you've seen, the most shocking or disturbing of changes that you've seen?
Yeah, you know, not to start with disturbance and shocks, the most positive surprise, I must say, for me was how resilient our books are. Yeah, so you could, of course, think about, you know, in a lot of regions, especially in Europe, in China, the situation started with complete lockdowns, where main channels that we have, bookshops and campus bookstores, have had to close. Yeah, so students were not able to go and buy, and even other customers could not go in. So the whole life, the business life, came to a complete stop. Then after a while, when we traveled, or when some of our sales reps started to travel again and visit some of these local bookshops, the surprise was indeed that shelves were more empty than we thought. And even in that time, we still kept on receiving orders, yeah, from customers. So you could see the books were still transacting, and the books were still being asked to be purchased by the customers. And this is a really strong indicator. Elsevier always said, you know, research is going on, teaching, learning is going on, and especially as we're in that field of health science, that was quite under focus in these days. You could also argue that our products had quite some significance for the customers. It would be crazy to say we have not seen a drop or we have not seen an impact on our business, but it was lesser actually than in our worst case scenarios we expected.
Okay, well that's fairly positive to hear. But there certainly have been some changes in how we do our work and how we interact with our customers and how they've been responding. What sort of things, though, have you seen there?
Yeah, of course, what I said earlier, it was amazing how quick we in Elsevier could move into home offices. Of course, in my organization, that has a lot to do that a lot of our colleagues and teams are field-based. Yeah? So they are anyway used to work in somehow isolation from home, alone. They couldn't see the customers, but we also experienced that we had a pretty strong relationship to our customers in book sales. So immediately it happened that people started to talk to each other, try to understand. We try to understand how we can support the customers. And yes, there have been a push to e-commerce. There's no doubt. Yeah. And we've also seen that we had an easier way to support customers that were already sharing information with us beforehand. Yeah, it's much easier give advice and to understand the situation of a customer if you know what their stock position is and what their normal sell-through would be and what their target group would be. And but we also saw that there is a much more focus on a localization. Yeah, so international distribution chains in a way broke down, and you had the disruption of the supply chain. So global players were not that active or important anymore, and it became much more important that the individual retailer, seller, bookstore understands its closer market environment. Yeah, so to be able to react in a pretty agile way to the local disruption and the local situation. Yeah, so in that sense, we saw also markets coming back quite strong, stronger than we expected. If you think about Germany, even France, Spain, and we have seen after a good while Italy coming back in with, of course, English language product, but just not being that much impacted than we thought.
Yeah, the potential disruption to the supply chain is quite an interesting topic there, because conceivably during lockdown, there could have been disruption around the print and the release of things out of the printing houses and shipments going around the world, or even deliveries coming out of our own warehouses. But we seemed to weather that storm okay, didn't we? We were able to continue supplying on all markets.
Actually, except India, we didn't have any warehouse closure in any of our markets. So all of our warehouses were able to operate and did operate. In India also, it was depending to the policy of the government. It have only been occasionally for short periods of time. The challenge was a bit more on the receiver side. Yeah, so we could not. For example, in the UK, we saw that shipping companies had to shut down their doors, that even wholesaling has to stop business for a while. Yeah, we were always be able to send books to our customers, but what we have seen is that the customers have not had the chance to get them on board. Yeah, and in addition, what was quite a surprise for us is that some global leading e-commerce players did actually focus on hygiene and home care products only. Yeah, and that might have driven the opportunity for a lot of agile, smaller businesses to use existing marketplaces to sell through stock they had. Yeah, because in the same time, as I said, we didn't have the chance to really supply to all the channels. The demand was still there to a certain extent, and this demand found its way through these marketplaces, through e-commerce, and through some innovative solutions at the town or at the space where, yes, booksellers started to do home delivery by bicycles, with cars, with whatever. And those have been in an advantageous or in a beneficial position that had even before the crisis a good relationship to their customers, yeah, who could utilize on an existing customer database in his local environment, had actually better chances to mitigate the situation than others who just had to start to think about that.
No, I'm glad you've sort of brought up the topic of mitigation, because I guess being a global player with customers all over the world, we've seen how different markets have reacted, and a lot of that physical marketplace, face-to-face selling totally disappeared. You know, even medical congresses where we would have had a lot of books being sold and stuff, that's been one of the big challenging areas. Have there been any situations or channels where we've seen opportunities to develop business to replace that, because a lot of those medical events no longer take place, or they're postponed until later in the year or even next year?
I think that is this is one of the gaps the overall crisis has produced, where still nobody exactly knows where it's going to. Yeah, so if we think about what potentially will change, what will stay, yeah, we have seen interesting initiatives with booksellers cooperating with their end client to, for example, send them the PIN code that we have in a lot of books, to send this PIN code scratched from the book in advance and then sending the book by post, so that the customer at the end could have the access to the ebook immediately and just receive then the physical book a while after.
And that's obviously something on a local, that's a very local response.
Yeah,
that's not obviously something that can be scaled up, but a lot of these booksellers are small.
Yeah, of course. And that's what I said. This is the advantage of being local and having access to your customer base and being accessible for your end customers. Somebody, of course, would have to call this bookshop and say, I urgently need that book. What can we do? Yeah. We ourselves, in collaboration with a bookseller in Italy, during that high COVID phase in April, made it possible that overnight an English language ventilation and airway management book went to that doctor at the end who really needed it. Yeah. We made, as Elsevier, we made ebooks possible or available for a short time for faculties, so to still keep visibility of our products and give a short-term solution for end users who didn't have access to their libraries anymore, where they normally would have lent the books. Yeah, all of these are individual situations that you would have seen, but the exhibition channel, that is really an interesting challenge. Yeah, so also knowing that Frankfurt Book Fair will not happen. I think for me, it's the first time after maybe 30 years I've not been there in person. So that's really a disruption.
So how are your team and yourself, how are you adapting to the fact that Frankfurt will not be physically taking place? What other plans have you in place? How are you meeting with your customers and catching up?
Yeah, the meetings are, anyway, you know, Frankfurt Book Fair was more increasingly a meet and greet situation, yeah, where most of the businesses have either been done before or after. So I think that is ongoing. And this is something where also, I think the whole economy learned that a reasonable amount of business can be done without this need to meet in person. Yeah. And I think this is something that definitely will stay. Yeah. So we with Elsevier, we do have plans to reduce our business traveling. From an environmental perspective, I must say, I really appreciate that situation. You know, yes. Not being able to meet people and not being able to have the, you know, to think a bit wider, to have creative meetings, develop new solutions. That is, I think, the part where we will miss the personal interaction. And I really hope that this is coming back at one point in the not too far future.
It's certainly very difficult to recreate that serendipitous, that opportunity, informal opportunities that normally present themselves at an event like Frankfurt or indeed the London Book Fair, which we've already missed this year.
Yeah.
And I also really hope that we'll see these events coming back onto the calendar in 21 at some point, and they may be slightly smaller in scale, but I do think it's important to foster those human connections that we have with a lot of our partners.
Absolutely. For a bit more, you know, for a bit more targeted event, we talk a lot about back to university in these days, because there is a difference how much our textbooks have been impacted. Of course, the textbooks follow the academic season. The academic season is driven by the universities and their reaction to COVID. So that has a bit more, let's say, prolonged or extended. Yeah, so you don't have these exact peaks anymore. But on the other hand, we were able to, for example, in Latin America and Mexico, we were able to agree with some of our partners in the country's virtual BTUs, you know, where we, the whole marketing now went from fresher fairs where the table would be into more social media kind of exhibitions. Yeah. There was bespoke offerings of certain textbooks that were aligned with the syllabus and the reading list of the university. QR codes that would lead into that social media advertising were shared amongst the students. You know, we try to, with a bookshop together, we try to go a bit viral with what we do, and this it has fairly a good success. Yeah. So,
again, that connection with the local. The fact is that you've got to basically build on that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And in a way, it's anyhow the way people communicate these days, and they would expect to be addressed. Yeah.
Yes, well, I think that marketing has played a huge role in how we've responded to the situation. There's an awful lot that we could talk about around that, and maybe that'll be in another session, another podcast where we can talk about the work.
I was about to say, I hope you will, somebody responsible in marketing to let our customers and partners understand.
Well, I think there's plenty of things that can be shared along those lines, and that is one of the things that you see about Frankfurt, is that it's one of these informal sharing networks where you do meet with colleagues and learn from people in other parts of the world. So there will be another podcast, I think, addressing that specific topic. We're almost out of time, Peter. What are you going to miss most about Frankfurt, since it's not taking place this year?
No, that's what I say. You know, I think I miss a lot to meet people in person. I will miss these pop-in opportunities, these talks and discussions you would not have expected to have. Yeah, it's often the influx of ideas comes from unexpected meetings, from unexpected questions. Even within a meeting that was scheduled, something new comes up, where you can build on. You can just be creative, try to find a solution. This is what I will miss, and as well I will miss contact to people I know for so long. And usually Frankfurt was the contact to look into each other's eyes and see how much older you got.
Okay, well, hopefully this is just a one-year blip, and we'll all be back on form next year. But until then, stay safe, and anybody that's listening, please watch out for the rest of our podcasts. There'll be some interesting topics coming up where we're sharing ideas and things. Okay.
Thank you very much, Fiona, for having me.
Thank you. Bye.